Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to be in Decatur later on this morning, and he's going to be talking about a project over there using some tax funds and some transportation funds. Surely he's going to also be asked about the lawsuits about the gun ban and maybe reaction to the challenger he had in November as the top name on that challenge in White County, challenging the state's gun ban and registry. So expecting to hear about that, but we do have a couple of weeks before we hear a lot more about the governor's agenda for the next year and also how much of a budget he's looking for to spend whenever the new state budget starts July 1st. So, of course, outside of the morning show, I run around the State House whenever they're in session and cover statewide news, talk to state lawmakers, talk to advocates on all sides of issues, talk to those who are being impacted by the state's policies, evaluate spending, evaluate taxation, and a whole host of other things. That's what I do day to day, and we bring it all here for Springfield's Morning News to kind of give you, a general understanding of what's going on. But in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, I believe it's mid-February, when the governor gives his budget and State of the State address in front of a joint session of the Illinois General Assembly, that's when we're going to hear the governor's agenda. What big things are he looking to address? Also, the governor's spending plan for the forthcoming budget. I think this budget that ends July 1st or June 30th. The new budget starts July 1st. But this budget spends about $46.5 billion of state funds. That's just the state's portion. Now, the state gets about matching that from federal tax funds. So altogether, the state's budget is like $115 billion or something like that. But half of that, roughly, is state tax dollars. And that's the money you pay in your income tax. That's the money you pay for, sales tax. It's the money you pay for, motor fuel tax and a whole host of other taxes that you pay to the state. But how much is the governor looking to spend come budget season, which is going to start up here in earnest a lot sooner than we think? Well, the governor was asked about some of this. Again, this is your tax dollars, how they're going to be spent. He was asked about some of his ideas about taxation, about spending in a news call he had with members of Illinois media. But Bloomberg was also on that call, and this was last week when he was still in Davos, Switzerland. And he talked about the questions of, are we going to see a resurgence of the progressive income tax? And that's the idea of changing Illinois' flat income tax status, which is in the Constitution, to a tiered system of if you make more money, then you pay more in a percentage of your income for income taxes. You have to change the state constitution to do that. A measure that was brought forward asking voters to do that back in 2020 failed. It did not get approved, but there seems to be some rumblings of bringing that back up. The governor said that's not something he's focused on. He talked about, having good tax receipts, better than expected, and how that's helping manage the budget. He pushed back on ideas that Illinois' finances are better now because of all of the COVID-19 funding. A lot of critics saying that those federal tax dollars coming to Illinois across all sectors, be it public or private sectors. I think it was like $160 billion in federal tax funds came to Illinois across, again, both public and private sectors, either grants to universities or city governments like Springfield that's sitting on about $20+ million of those federal tax grants, to private businesses getting those paycheck protection loans that were forgivable. So again, your tax dollars being used for all of that. But the governor pushed back and said, no, it's his management that's doing that. Of course, we'll see how that comes out in the wash. But he did address some of the questions about how to deal with a possible recession. What about taxation? What about spending? This is a question, again, from Bloomberg on a news call that the governor had last week when he was over in Davos, Switzerland. And here is some of what he had to say during that conversation.
So given still high inflation and the potential for a recession in the year ahead, what are your expectations? Do you think that fiscal 24 for Illinois, there is going to be a surplus, or is it going to be a challenge to post a surplus this year? And then I have a follow-up as well.
Well, we start with a focus on balancing the budget. I mean, obviously, if we think that we could run a surplus, we'll show that in our budget proposal, which will come in February. But, balancing the budget in Illinois is a relatively new thing, over the last 4 years. And so we're proud of the fact that we focused on that. And sometimes the focus on that and when you add up all of the needs of the state and look at the potential revenue coming in, you can project a surplus. We've been very conservative. I think you've seen this over my entire term in terms of the revenue projections, because we don't ever want to get into a situation where you get near the end of the year, and it turns out, revenue isn't meeting your expenditure needs. And so we've been conservative about it. And as a result, we've balanced budgets and run surpluses. So we'll continue to do that. We don't, when you say plan for surpluses, we plan for balancing the budget. And if we believe that the revenue, will be greater than the, ahead of time when we're planning the budget, if we believe it will be greater than the expenditure needs, we then think about, the question of, can we provide tax relief? How can we encourage, a reduction in, expenditures in the state so that, we're continuing to run surpluses and, just the regular things that you would think about if you had revenue coming in that you thought might exceed expenditures. Are there things that we aren't doing that we need to invest in that aren't planned for? And again, we try to put all that together in the budget and present it as such. I know you had two questions. That was, I think, the first.
Yeah, my second question was something that you just mentioned related to what your focus is for the the current session or the new General Assembly session about property taxes. So I'm curious about what your focus is going to be in this session or your next 4 years in terms of property taxes and other tax relief in Illinois, because that seemed to be something that you highlighted just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, I highlight it because, when you think about what taxes need to be reduced, that's certainly one that I think most people would point to about Illinois. And I would say that, as you know, the number one thing that drives our property taxes to the level they're at is an underfunding of education from the state level. Now, that's a historical problem. When I came into office, Trudy, 24% of education funding was coming from the state, and most of the rest of it, other than the roughly 10% that comes from the federal government, was coming from local property taxes. Compare that to the average state in the United States, where 46% of funding comes from the state, and 46 comes from the local government, and the rest from the federal government. So, we need. Since I took office, we have approached 30% now of funding coming from the state, no longer 24%. So we've moved in the right direction. I think we need to keep moving in the right direction. And what does that do? It alleviates the burden on local property taxpayers and on the people who decide local property taxes, which are local entities, to have to raise taxes. And so, as we do more of that, we expect local entities, taxing bodies to start to, bring down their need for local property taxes. And, we think that that's a goal that we ought to, that we ought to be able to achieve. And, we did provide and already have provided property tax relief last year in the package that we passed last year. So it's already been a focus of mine, and I'm going to continue to do that and work with the legislature on it. We made a change in PTEL over the last year. I think that will have a positive benefit, but there's more to do.
So again, that was Governor J.B. Pritzker talking with members of the media on a news call while he was still over in Davos, Switzerland last week, talking about a focus on taxing and spending, and in particular, a major focus he has on trying to help local taxing bodies like your school district in lowering the property tax rate by increasing the amount of money that the state gives to public schools K through 12. So we'll see if that comes out with the possibility that you'll see property taxes decrease, and we'll see just how much those local taxing bodies like your school district are willing to lower property taxes if indeed there's that trade-off of more state funds going to public education. All right, much more to come on the budget, on the spending. We've got several months until the start of the fiscal year, and a lot's going to be said about all of the different types of budget requests that there are for state government. All right, so stay tuned. It's Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on